The opinions brought up in this episode of A Teens Two Toonies are my own and my own alone. You may not share the same opinions, however, it is not bad if you don't. Please don't attack myself nor anyone else that has worked on this show with me. Please also know that the topics in this episode may include, but are not limited to, racism, discrimination, politics, political bias, unsettling content. Please watch at your own discretion. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome to A Teens Two Toonies. My name is Zeb Fulcher. I'm 15 years old. I currently live in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, with my two moms and my favorite dog in the world, Hamilton. I attend a performing arts high school with a focus on piano, drama, and vocal performance. I love musical theater. Despite the fact that I was born and raised in Canada, the news and current event segments in the show will likely be American-focused, and there are a few personal reasons why. I live in a border city right across the river from Detroit, Michigan, where I spend a lot of my time. I spent my summers at Interlochen Arts Camp in northern Michigan. One of my parents were born and raised in America, specifically Houston, Texas, and my life goal was to be on Broadway, so living in New York City. But in truth, what happens in America has a massive impact on all Canadians. America is like Canada's older brother, where we look up to them, we are influenced by them, and when our older brother starts to behave badly, we follow suit. Since the Orange Clowns election, I have witnessed a huge increase in what I call the MAGA Factor, not only in the States, but also in Canada. The MAGA Factor is general aggression, a lack of accepting responsibility, or lack of empathy, acceptance of bullying, greed, narcissism, overt racism, and bigotry. And most disturbing, a willingness to spread misinformation and labeling of legit news as fake news. I hope that this show is sometimes serious, sometimes funny, and always informative. Welcome, and enjoy. To get started this week, today is June 8th, 2020, and it is currently 2 p.m. as of the uploading of this episode. To begin, let's look at this week's hot topics, or what was in the news this week. The George Floyd and BLM protests have been raging over the country for 15 days as of the uploading of this episode, including the recent assault committed by armed forces arriving at the scene, attacking not only protesters, but groups of medical workers protecting protesters.
We had set up a medical center so that anyone protesting would be safe. We were not protesting, we were not agitating, we had claimed that space. We had set up a triage area in case of any injuries. We had eye wash, sutures, EMTs, doctors, EMS workers. They came in full riot gear, hit us with shields, threw several people to the ground. We were grabbed, thrown, shouted at, screamed at, treated as criminals. No one resisted.
Also, one 15-year-old man in Buffalo, New York, has been shoved to the ground by police. Warning, this video contains graphic content.
Bleeding out of his ear. He's bleeding out of his ear. Get somebody over here. He's bleeding out of his ear.
As you can see, the man's ear begins to bleed after taking a hard fall down. However, the man is expected to make a full recovery in the coming weeks. The two officers shown in the video have been fired. However, 57 other officers resigned from the Buffalo police in protest of the two officers' firing. More on this later. Coronavirus cases have risen from June 1st, from 6,291,712 cases and 374,359 deaths worldwide to 6,941,178 cases and 400,837 deaths 111,943 in the United States alone as of June 6th. Now, I personally wonder if that increase has anything to do with the stay-at-home protests that happened a couple weeks ago.
Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing.
Before I begin this next segment, I want to mention that I will never, during the course of this show, mention the name of the current president of the United States, for I find that his name is cursed, and I will treat it like Voldemort. Welcome to the dump truck, where I show the idiocracy of the buffoon-in-chief. This guy. But really, do I need to point any of them out? This week, the dump truck went to St. John's Church across from the White House for a photo op of him holding a Bible. Seriously. This man and a Bible. Like, seriously. And how does President Tan Lines ensure a clear shot for the lightning strike? I mean, picture. He orders the use of force on protesters around the church. The police force used tear gas to clear the protesters. However, the big fat liar denies that, saying, quote, "They didn't use tear gas." Really? So, the victims, witnesses, and video evidence are fake news, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that the Constitution expressly allows for peaceful protest, and the Dark Lord decided to use tear gas to clear law-abiding peaceful protesters so that he could wave around a Bible for some cameras. Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Bowser, had the words "Black Lives Matter" painted onto the ground outside of St. John's Church, so that Air Force One will see the message anytime it takes off. She also renamed that section of the street Black Lives Matter Plaza. Great job, Mayor Bowser. President Raccoon Eyes, if you're hearing or watching this, please remember the number one rule of theater: don't touch other people's props. Also, earlier in the week, the Dark Lord threatened that he would not be afraid to use lethal military force on the protesters.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
Even earlier in the week, the narcissist in chief claimed that the United States, while addressing the destruction for the protesters, had, quote, "one law and order." That is what it is. One law. We have one beautiful law. So, are all the other laws just legal now? Can I go to someone's house and steal from them and murder their entire family legally now? I didn't think so. That's it for the dump truck. More after this break. Hey, do you want a podcast where you can talk about some of your favorite movies such as Iron Man and Detective Pikachu? What about some old movies such as The Wizard of Oz or Star Wars? Well, you've come to the right place. Visit the Movie Mania Podcast, now on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and more. Talk to our hosts, Zeb Fulcher and Ryan Hill, about some of your favorite movies. New episodes every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, do you want to come on to the show? Email us at themoviemaniapodcast@gmail.com. That's themoviemaniapodcast@gmail.com. Welcome back, everyone, to A Teens to Toonies, and welcome to the next segment of the show, the MAGA Factor. This segment is where I show off people who have obviously been influenced by he who should not be named, and the absolutely horrible things that they've done because of it. As I had mentioned earlier in the show, during a protest in Buffalo, New York, an elderly man was pushed over by police, which, thankfully, resulted in the two officers being fired. After this became public, 57 other officers resigned from the Buffalo Police in protest of the officers' firing, which is, in all honesty, despicable. But thank God the Buffalo Police Department is down 57 officers who think it's okay to push over a 75-year-old protester. Two officers pushed over a polite, peaceful, elderly protester with the intent to do so, which could have resulted in the protester's untimely death. But instead of seeing how the man's life was at risk, these 57 other officers resigned to show how they supported the officer's actions. The officer's actions were, in all honesty, vile and disgusting, and how they walked over him after he was on the ground is despicable. But when you show support to them, that is even more deplorable. I hope that these officers get exactly what they deserve and that they will never be hired by another police force again. In other news, you may have seen this circling around the internet. A woman who was walking her dog without a leash in Central Park gets stopped by an African American bird watcher who asked for her to put her dog on a leash. Instead of being a civil person and putting the dog on the leash, which is also what you're supposed to do in Central Park, there are laws about it, she decides to call the police and say that, quote, an African American man is threatening her and her dog's life. Look at this.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the ramble, and there is a man, African American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
In what circumstance is this an acceptable reaction to a kind man asking you to put your dog on a leash? In what state of mind can you or should you do this? This woman commits 2 crimes here, the all dogs must be on a leash law, and making a false call to the police, which is punishable by jail time. However, none of this happens. And not only did that happen, but while calling the police still without the leash on the dog, she holds the collar of the dog, choking it. As you can see in the video, the dog is flailing around trying to show that it's in distress, but she does nothing about it. After the incident, the dog was taken into an animal care center, and on June 5th, sadly, she got the dog returned to her. I'm having a hard time with that. Since I have a dog, I love my dog so much, and if anyone were to treat my dog like this, I would be so furious with them that I would want practically a restraining order. But getting the dog back, I find, is even worse. Oh, and just in case you think that this could only happen in America by Americans, you're wrong. This was made by a Canadian. A Canadian did this. That's all from the MAGA Factor. Up next, internet culture. In relation to these protests, internet celebrities Jake and Logan Paul have been showing their support to the Black Lives Matter protests, but in their own special ways. The Paul brothers are a pair of internet vloggers who have had their fair share of controversy for the past few years, from one of them filming a dead body in a Japanese suicide forest, or one of them being accused of scamming minors into buying their merchandise. But recently, brother Jake Paul was seen at a Scottsdale, Arizona protest, with protesters who were known to be breaking into buildings, even a shopping mall, and looting items such as alcohol. Jake went on to Twitter a few days after being called out, saying, quote, "Neither I nor anyone in our group was engaged in any looting or vandalism," even though there is video evidence of a looter giving Jake a stolen bottle of some kind. He goes on to add, quote, "We were strictly documenting, not engaging." After the internet caught wind of this, they started to turn some hate onto him, including Jake's brother Logan. After the Scottsdale police were informed of what happened to Jake, they posted the tweet, Quote, "We've received hundreds of tips in response to the events at Scottsdale's Fashion Square," the mall Jake was seen in. "In our continued investigation, it was confirmed that Jake Paul was in attendance and remained inside after an unlawful assembly was declared and has been charged with criminal trespass and unlawful assembly." Jake's response to getting charged with having something on his criminal file, he says, "Give me the charges and let's put the focus back on George Floyd and Black Lives Matter." Logan Paul, on his podcast, Impulsive, went on to say in a powerful speech this.
Listen closely. One of my biggest learnings from all of this, and I'm embarrassed that it's taken me 25 years to realize this. It is not enough to be not racist. You have to be anti-racist.
Yes.
Condemn those who feign superiority because of the color of their skin. Friends, hold friends accountable. Hold your family accountable. Hold yourself accountable. And most importantly, we must hold our authorities accountable. Police officers, politicians, policymakers. As Killer Mike said, bully the politicians at the voting booth. Make your voice heard. Attend a protest. Speak up against injustice. If you're white, if you look like me, use your privilege. And for those who do not think white privilege exists, you are fucking blind. You are delusional and you are part of the problem. I can count on 0 hands the amount of times that I have feared for my life at a routine traffic stop. That has never happened. Half of the reason I'm able to get away with some of my hooligan shit I do in my vlogs is because I'm a white kid. I'm confident that I do not have to fear for my life should the cops show up. Acknowledge and weaponize your privilege. I believe we're going to a protest today. You can bet your fucking ass I'll be in the front line. Knowing all this about America, its racially charged background, its inability to truly treat humans as equals, even after 244 years since its inception, we must now work towards finding the solution. And if you are an influencer or a celebrity friend of mine, I hope you are using your platform to continue to spread the message of solidarity and unity. I do not have all the answers, but I know we must now reverse engineer the system as a collective. We must open our eyes and realize that there is only one race, and that is the human race. On behalf of Breonna Taylor, we must change. On behalf of Ahmaud Arbery, we must advance. And on behalf of George Floyd and the hundreds of others who have been unjustly murdered in this country, we must evolve.
Logan has been very silent on what his brother did. However, on June 5th, he posted a screenshot from Yahoo Weekly News showing an article of Jake's charging with Logan's face on it, with the caption, quote, "I demand an apology, Yahoo." In my opinion, Jake shouldn't have filmed the protest to begin with, especially in a group of people who are breaking into and stealing things from different buildings, since that is the worst side of these protests. I believe that the protests are essential to having people wake up and see the racial inequalities that exist in our society, to accept the reality of white privilege. I also believe that being destructive and destroying things, like buildings, is a very negative part of these protests. It allows people to focus on the negative instead of focusing on the situation. If the majority of protesters were peaceful and weren't destroying things, then we could really focus on the people being murdered and mistreated by police. We can focus on repairing the systematic racism that we live with every day. If you don't believe that there's racism in your country, you're wrong. There is. There will always be overt racists, but systemic racism is a real problem. The silent enemy of the people. Get that into your heads, everyone. If you don't keep fighting, if we just stop these protests right here, then nothing's going to get done. We must keep fighting for change. It worked with Stonewall. It worked for American independence. It worked to give women the right to vote. And it worked to end segregation. It'll work this time too. After this break, we'll be back with some more lighthearted news. Stick around. Hello, everyone. So each week I'm going to be giving out a new charity that we're going to be trying to donate for. This week's charity is going to be Black Lives Matter, of course. I'm sorry, my dog is barking outside. Black Lives Matter is the support of the movement on ongoing fight to end state-sanctioned violence and liberate black people and end white supremacy forever. And this charity needs as much money as you can donate now to try to end all of the horrible things that the government has done and that the police force has done, and how they've also not done anything to change it. So please, please, please donate. I will be donating $15 by the end of the week. I don't have the money just yet, but I will be donating next Wednesday $15, and I hope you guys will be contributing as well. Welcome back, everyone, to our final segment of today. Something light. It's just where I looked and found some happier things to talk about to end each episode off on a light note. So I found this article by goodnewsnetwork.org titled, "After Finding His African City Missing from Maps, Zimbabwe Man Creates 2,000 Miles of Google Street Views." So I've read this article, and it talks about a man who moved to the U.S. after living in the capital city of Zimbabwe, where he found out that the entire country of Zimbabwe, as well as other countries in Africa, are completely absent from Google Street Views. I had no idea about this, so I looked it up. Sure enough, Zimbabwe's there, but I can't find some weird African countries. I don't know why. Well, he set out to film the 2,000 miles of land that Zimbabwe takes up, and even some other places, like icy roads of Ontario and these other African countries, as a hobby. I don't know if he's getting paid. He probably is, because he's spending a lot of money on gas. But he's doing this just to support the American people, as well as those that have access to Google Street View. So big props to you, man. And yeah, that's going to end this episode here. That brings us to the end of our time here today. We upload new episodes of A Teens Two Toonies every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel, as well as Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Anchor, Breaker, CastBox, Overcast, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at A Teens Two Toonies with the number 2, or at the link in the description below. Have a good evening, everyone. See you next week.